Hello, another pleasant morning to all of you. We are Group 5 and our group was assigned to discuss government failure. But before we start our discussion, we want to share with you a question that we've been asking ourselves and we assume that it might resonate to some of you. So the question was, why is there a need to study market and government failure? So the answer I get when I did my research was, first, market failure theory shows a situation wherein market cannot reach efficient or fair outcomes. Second, government failure theory shows government may also implement costly, inefficient, or inequitable interventions. And because both fail in different ways, the real issue is understanding how and why this failure happens so countries can design a better policies. To formally start our presentation, allow Ms. Marzan to start her discussion. Thank you.
Be discussing government failure. Government failure happens when public intervention in the economy produces inefficiency, waste, or corruption rather than solving problems of underdevelopment or poor service delivery. According to Data Chowdhury, 1990, government failure occurs when government actions distort resource allocation and reduce social welfare instead of improving it. For example, when a government builds a costly road that serves few people or when projects are delayed due to political interference, that's a form of government failure. According to Legrand, 1991, government failure happens when there is a information problem, incentive problem, and bureaucratic inefficiency. Information problems, it is when officials lack local knowledge about the needs and project feasibility. Incentive problems, it is when politicians and bureaucrats pursue political visibility or rent-seeking. Lastly, bureaucratic inefficiency, it is when there is a slow processes, red tape, and lack of coordination between agencies. Carino said that weak accountability and institutional fragility contribute to poor performance of state functions, including infrastructure delivery.
According to the material of Data Chowdhury and Legrand 1991, market fail for several reasons, and it includes, first, there are externalities and public goods wherein markets often undervalue goods that are or that have benefits spilling over to others. When external benefits not reflected in the market price, we get underproduction like in education or in vaccination. Meanwhile, when external costs are ignored, we get overproduction such as pollution. According to the material also, public goods create market failure because they are non-rival and non-excludable. Things like street lighting or national defense cannot be effectively provided by the private markets because no one can be prevented from using, and one person's use does not reduce availability for others. Second, market fails due to imperfect information. Consumers and producers do not have equal knowledge, and for example, in relationship between patients and doctors, patients know less than doctors, which can lead to oversupply of treatment or medicine. And therefore, in terms of insurance, firms know less about true risk of the clients, creating an adverse selection which often results in underinsurance. And because information is uneven, markets cannot allocate goods efficiently. Third, certain industries experience increasing returns to scale, creating natural monopolies. Utilities and transportation systems become cheapest when single firm serves the entire market. While a monopoly might be internally efficient, it is not allocatably efficient. High prices and low off lead to inefficiency and society is worse off. So fourth is markets also fail due to coordination failure in development. Early development economists also argue that poor economies need simultaneous investment across multiple sectors to escape the cycle of poverty. Markets alone cannot coordinate large-scale investment like infrastructure because benefits spill over to other sectors as well. And without coordination of private firms and development stagnant. Now, shifting to government failure, Legrand and Data Chowdhury note that government intervention also comes with limitations. One reason is this disjunction between cost and revenues, wherein government agencies are not disciplined by profit, so they may use more resources than necessary, leading to waste. The absence of competitive pressure results in low productivity and weak incentives innovative. Another cause of government failure is the internalities where bureaucracies pursue goals that not always align with public interest. And this may include budget maximization, expanding staff, and influence or maintaining personal comfort. Lastly, failure in implementing policies also leads to government failure. And according to the materials of Data Cho Duri, he emphasizes that policies may look good in paper but actually fails in practice due to, first, rigid bureaucracy, rent-seeking, and soft budget constraints in public enterprises. Government failure in the Philippines happens because of pervasive corruption, weak disaster preparedness, and cronyism, or the appointment of friends and associates to positions of authority without proper regard to their qualifications or not based on merit, which this hinder economic progress and citizen well-being. These issues manifest in problems like a failed infrastructure project and inadequate public services. And a clear manifestation of this were the circulating issues regarding ghost and substandard flood control projects, 300 ghost super health centers, non-operational super health centers, and classrooms where only 22 out of 1,700 planned were completed. But before this, there are also failed projects in the former administration, just like the administration of Aquino, his PPP projects, and also in Duterte's administration, his build programs. Aside from all the information they have provided, they also provided recommendations on what should the government do. First is to intervene only where market failures are serious and use the right type of intervention. Third, design policies with incentives and not just rules. And fourth is strengthen institutions' accountability, competition, and transparency. To sum up, both authors are both authors highlights that both markets and governments fail, but for different reasons. In instance, markets fail because of externalities, imperfect information, and monopoly power, which prevent efficient and fair outcomes. Therefore, on the other hand, governments try to fix this, but they may fail due to bureaucratic incentives, lack of cost discipline, rent-seeking, and the unlimited consequences of large-scale programs. Both authors want to emphasize that the choice of a tool um, tool, provision, subsidy, or regulation matters more than the ideology. One of the forms of a government failure is the special interest effect. So what is it, you may ask? It happens when the government laws and regulations are created to benefit specific group rather than the general public. These groups are very active, powerful in influencing laws. They lobby, they spend money, and they put pressure on politicians, while the taxpayer bear the cost. From that definition, the actors involved are the taxpayer, politicians, and the organized groups. These actors interact in a cycle that shapes many government laws and regulations. Also, the special interest effect focuses on how costs and benefits are divided. The small and organized group gain benefit or advantage from a law, while the costs are spread thinly across the taxpayer or the general public. Thus the cost is spread thinly that they won't even notice or feel it. So the organized groups and the politicians take advantage of this. So the public might not even know that the law exists, which again give benefits or advantage to the organized group. Also, industries are highly dependent on government subsidies. So when the government decides to remove subsidies, some sectors and or industries may not survive. So their tactic is to hire lobbyists to protect their profit and to influence laws. And the readings of Cordato gives three examples as to how special interest effect happens. The first one is the green energy subsidies. The government decides to spend more in supporting solar and wind companies, but because the costs are spread or are divided in among the taxpayers, is that they won't even feel it. And the second one is the mandatory insurance benefit. So the government requires insurance companies to add more services, and these services, some of the taxpayers won't need the service, but they need to pay it through their taxes. And the last one is the imports or limits on imported sugar. limits on imported sugar cause the sugar prices to inflate, and the consumer pays more on sugary products, while the sugar producers benefit from it. Among the three cases, their common ground is that the public bear the hidden cost, um, while the companies benefit or enjoy its benefit. So now let's move on to how special interest effect happens in the Philippines. So the first case is the ONBN ZTE broadband deal, which the project was supposed to improve the internet for government use, but it was later on found out to be overpriced, and many government officials allegedly receive bribes from it. So this is a case that falls under special interest effect because the contractors and the government officials who supported the project would have benefited from it, and through making the project an overpriced one, and the public would have suffered from the cost, that would have paid for the overpriced project and through their taxes. So the next one is the next case is the Build program under the Duterte administration. So many projects were pushed through unsolicited proposals, meaning that the private companies such as Metro Pacific and San Miguel and other companies approached the government with their own project ideas. So critics such as IDO and foundations said that this program made the big businesses to even more flourish, to even more foster, to even gain more profit. So they labeled the program as a golden age for oligarchs. And sure enough, the projects that this program the projects were labeled as white elephants, meaning it is unplanned, useless, or rush. So from that case, is an example of special interest effect because the taxpayers suffered from it. The contractors or the government officials use the public funds for the substandard infrastructures, and this program is more on about profit and political visibility and less about what the public truly needs. So the next factor to that is the increase of the limits of authority in 2018. So the district offices could approve up to 150 million budgets on projects, while the regional offices could approve for up to 450 million. The rationale for this one is so that they could speed up the project approvals, while it also opened the door for corruption, that there were reports such as ghost projects and corruption, rig bidding, and so forth. So the clear example for this is the construction network of the Diskaya construction company, which they have secured 31 billion for on flood control projects, when the investigation said that there were rig bidding, connections with the PWH officials, and duplicate projects. So, despite the red flags, the red flags, the system still approved, or still the project were pushed through. So especially after the increase of the limits of authority in 2008. So it falls under the special interest effect because it reveals that the contractors or the private companies, specific groups, and the government officials work together to use the state's resources. So why this happens? So allow me to use through the lens of public choice theory, in which it assumes that the state actors are driven by their self-interest, just like individuals in the markets. So from the aforementioned cases, it can be pointed out that the constructors, the private companies, or specific groups work hard to secure government deals because they could benefit from it. It could increase their profit, and meanwhile the government officials or the politicians also benefit from it through their through the specific to the support of the specific groups or the private companies, and that they since the public are rationally uninformed, meaning that they put less effort in monitoring every projects, every programs of the government, is that they the government officials and um, the organized group take advantage of their situation, so that in which in which it reflects, it is evident that the government officials listens or prioritize the needs of the specific groups or the private companies. So according from the readings of Cordato, he it yeah it there are solutions to that. Specifically, three solutions for that. Is the first one is the legislators should understand how the system works, and that they shouldn't prioritize what the specific group wants just for the sake of increasing the chance of re-election. And then second one is that there should be fairness. So when the government decides to increase budget on specific industries, that other industries should give up of theirs too, so that there could be fairness. And the last one is to that um, there should be there should be increased, or there should be um, awareness of the public, so that they could demand accountability and understand how specific groups can influence government decisions.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Today's subject is about a topic that has gripped the country since time immemorial. It's about the perennial problem of short-sightedness effect, or political myopia. It basically refers to the short-sightedness of policymakers, political leaders, and governments in decision-making. It is often driven by electoral cycles or immediate public pressures at the expense of long-term planning, sustainability, or overall societal welfare. But let me ask you this. Is it really a problem? Does giving the people an immediate relief or solution is bad? Does building public trust by doing so is bad? Does prioritizing short-term needs more important than long-term goals? So I am here today to explain to you why political myopia happens in the first place. Is it inherently evil? When does it become a problem? What are the manifestations of political myopia? And also provide examples relating in the Philippine context, and what are the solutions that we may apply. So first, why political myopia happens in the first place? In accordance to the readings of Bonfiglioli and Gancia, political myopia arises primarily from electoral incentives that under uncertainty, and that is from short-term focus of politicians who must seek re-election in an environment where the future outcomes is uncertain. Is it inherently evil? Is it necessarily bad? Well, the answer to that is no. It is not inherently evil, as Bonfiglioli and Gancia stated that political myopia is rational, and it is just a systemic response to incentives embedded in democratic politics, and it is not necessarily a reflection of corruption or immoral behavior. So, case in point, assuming that all politicians act strategically and not immorally, and that they respond to what are the voters' rewards, or what the voters can give for them. This act of short-term responsiveness can be desirable for us, as it keeps them, or as it keeps the politicians accountable and responsible to public needs. However, when does this become a problem? Problems arise when the short-term focus becomes excessive, leading to policy distortions, and that undermines the long-term welfare. So, Bonfiglioli and Gancia argue that it becomes a problem when short-term focus crowd out long-term investments, such as in education, research, or infrastructure. And another one is high uncertainty or short political horizons make politicians excessively cautious or opportunistic. Lastly, voters cannot observe long-term benefits of policies, so politicians prefer actions that are visible but shallow, as it relates to principal agent theory, wherein the principal, or we, the people, and the agent, the politician, possesses informations that only the agent have, and therefore it results to information asymmetry, and therefore it results to policy inefficiency or government inefficiency. Manifestations of political myopia. Political cycles occurs when government decisions and policies change according to the timing of elections rather than the actual needs of the country. And politicians focus on actions that boost their popularity before voting periods. And I can say that it is rampant in our country and our city. Well, such as launching visible projects, increasing spending, or giving subsidies to the people. just to gain electoral advantage. Because these actions are concentrated around election time, policies become short-term and reactive rather than the strategic and long-term policies. This cycle repeats every election, causing the instability and preventing consistent development planning. Another one is misallocation of resources. Political myopia leads to inefficient use of public funds because leaders choose projects that provide immediate or visible rather than those deliver real long-term benefits. Resources are directed to political attractive projects such as beautifications of efforts, small-scale infrastructure, or highly publicized initiatives. And this is rampant in our city also. And the best representation for that is the Dolomite Beach. Well, spending on Dolomite Beach instead of long-term coastal rehabilitation or waste management measures. Lastly, policy ineffectiveness. Short-sighted policy making often produces policies that are either incomplete or poorly designed or unsustainable because politicians prioritize what is immediately beneficial for that time, and many policies lack proper planning, evaluation, or long-term funding. As a result, they fail to solve underlying issues, and it produces lasting impact. This can also lead to abrupt policy changes when the new administration comes. So the best representation for that is the 4Ps or programs like free college tuition that may be expanded or politically appeal, but without adequate long-term financing or institutional strengthening, it may reduce the intended effectiveness of these projects. So another example for that is anti-political dynasty bill. In Article 2, Section 26 of the Philippine Constitution, the state shall guarantee equal access to opportunities for public service and prohibit political dynasties as may be defined by law. The common concept of political dynasty is it exists where family members up to 4th degree of consanguinity or affinity either successively or simultaneously run or for or occupied public offices. Although the efforts have been made, it's been 38 years since the 1987 Constitution, and there is still no law to give meaning to the Section 26, Article 2 of the Constitution. And mind you, that Congress is constitutionally mandated to enact a law, and it's been 38 years. And 38 years is an unreasonable length of time for a Congress to craft a simple definition. But it is certainly enough for political dynasties to establish themselves in their respective provinces. So, therefore, political myopia sustains political dynasties and obstructs the passages of anti-political dynasty bill because politicians focus on short-term self-preservation and electoral gain rather than long-term democratic reform and institutional strengthening. As stated in the examples, the consequences of political myopia are stunted economic growth. The failure of implementing comprehensive economic reforms results in erratic growth patterns and persistently poverty levels. Another one is weak institutional development because long-term institutional reforms, it takes time and short-sighted politicians often avoid them. And the last one is fiscal imbalance in public debt. To finance popular short-term policies, the government often borrows heavily and creating budget deficits and rising public debt, just like in the 4Ps and free college tuition projects. So what are the solutions for political myopia? So addressing the political myopia requires a combination of institutional reforms, accountability measures, civic engagement, and incentive structures that encourage politicians to prioritize long-term welfare over immediate popularity. So by creating a system that rewards foresight and penalize short-term opportunism, governments can produce policy, short-sightedness, and improve governance outcomes. Next one.
Good day everyone. So today I will be tackling about rent seeking. So according to Gordon Tullock, rent seeking means trying to gain wealth without helping the economy grow or making society better. This usually happens when people or businesses use their power to get special benefits like tax cuts, subsidies, or laws that favor them. Ann Kruger adds that rent seeking can also appear through bribery, corruption, smuggling, and black markets. Jeffrey Sachs and his co-authors explain how government rent-seeking affected the Philippines in the past. First, the government controlled major export crops like sugar and coconuts, which slowed export growth. Second, private businesses became weak because the government favored only certain companies, creating chronic businesses and causing many investors to lose trust. Third, when these crony companies collapsed in the 1980s, the government was left with huge unpaid debts and failed assets, creating a serious financial problem. Public choice theory helps explain why rent seeking happens. This theory says that politicians and groups act based on self interest, not only for the public good. Because of this, they may lobby or influence the government to get special advantages, even if it harms society. During the 1970s, especially under Marcos Sr., rent seeking became strong because economic power was centralized. The president could easily sign decrees to favor certain people or groups, which led to cronyism and abuse of power. According to Kumar 2025, there are ways to reduce rent seeking. First is transparency. If government decisions are open to the public, it becomes harder for people to secretly gain special favors. Second is simplifying regulations because fewer and clearer rules give fewer chances for corruption. Third is building strong institutions like independent courts and regulatory bodies to make sure rules are applied fairly. In simple terms, rent seeking is harmful because it helps only a few people while society pays the price. The Philippine experience shows how favoritism and government control can weaken the economy. To fight this, countries need transparent governance, simple rules, and strong institutions. These steps can reduce corruption, support fair competition, and help the economy grow in a way that benefits everyone. So that is all. Thank you.
Government failure is a result of coordinated efforts between those in power and those with influence. These actors know how to navigate the system, exploit loopholes, and use state resources to serve their own benefit or interest rather than the general public. So many government projects were labeled as what the people needs, what the public needs. But if we look at it at beyond the surface level, it is a cover-up reason or a necessary project that no one even asked for. So corruption and fraud became the tools to stay in power, to accumulate wealth, and to protect their position. So one of their tactics is to form alliances with contractors, bureaucratic circles, and political allies, so that this web of connection makes it harder to expose the irregularities of their transactions. So when the government starts serving themselves rather than the people, it is a government failure. So the government failure that discussed in this report are the following: political myopia, special interest effect, and rent seeking. So using the public choice theory, it helps us understand that the people in the government treat politics as business as usual, that it is not always for the public good or what the public for the general public. So from those aforementioned forms of government failure, their pattern is government failure works where the self-interest dominates, the accountability is weak, and institutions are fragile. So what is the best course of action to that? The powerful tools, political awareness and political education are the powerful tools in combating those problems. So when the people understands how the government works, they start questioning where did their taxes go, who is responsible or who is accountable for the misuse of public funds, and um, does the government project truly benefits the public, or who truly benefits from the government projects. And moreover, budgets, audit reports, and contracts should be accessible for everyone. And when people are empowered or have this awareness, they are empowered to question, to break the silence, to question, to challenge the abusive system. So it should be also taken into account that it is not about replacing the people, people that are in power. That there should be institutional reform so that we could have a system where
there is where the where accountability is strengthened and there is a good governance. So that is all. Thank you.